My name is Todd Caponi, and I am a results leader.
You're listening to ResultsLeader.fm. Being a thought leader is easy. Getting results is hard. This show is for the results leader who lives and dies by their results. Here is your host and Chief Results Leader, Jonathan Rivera.
Welcome back to another edition of ResultsLeader.fm. I am so glad that you guys are back, and I have something very special for you today. I have an interview with an author and a sales historian. That's what he calls himself, a sales historian. He wrote the book, The Transparency Sale. His name is Todd Caponi, and I love this guy. He is a wealth of knowledge. He is fun to talk to, and he's got science backing him. Believe in the science of sales. We're going to jump into this interview, and I know that you're going to love it as much as I do. So here we go. All right, Todd, what is up? How are you?
It is good to see you.
Yeah, man. I felt like when we did the pre-interview, I was like, God, why didn't we just record this thing? But here we are again, and now I'm going to grill you, brother. Are you ready for this?
I guess so. I'm as ready as I'm ever going to be. So no turning back.
All right, let's do this, man. So, Todd, what book or books have you given most as a gift?
Wow. What book or books have I given? Man, I don't, we had talked about this before a little bit, but like, I'm not much of a reader of books anymore, which I know sounds counterintuitive, but like I read behavioral science research every day. And then I read books from sales history from like the early 20th century. I'm reading a book right now from 1909, and it's just called The Book on Selling. It is like 50% amazing and 50% some of the wackiest feedback you've ever heard. And I wish I had a stack of them that I could give away because they're incredible.
Yeah, you're hoarding those books, so you can't talk about those because none of us can get our hands on them. So what's the stack of books behind me? You got to be giving some books away. Come on.
Oh, I see where you're going with this question. I'm a little slow today. Yeah, I wrote a book that when it came out, I thought there was a 50-50 chance that it would suck, but people seem to like it, called The Transparency Sale. I wrote it a couple of years ago, and it actually sold more in year 2 than year 1. So apparently it's resonating, which is amazing. And you're right. I do give away a lot of those.
This guy. Looks like them 1901 books aren't working for you, pal.
That's right. I got like a full thing of coffee here, and it's just not working.
All right. Now let's get serious here. So, Todd, tell me, how has an apparent failure set you up for later success?
Well, you're asking some really powerful questions here to get us started, which is fantastic. So earlier in my career, let's go early 2000s, there was a time, I don't know if you remember this, but like 1999, everybody was worried about the Y2K crisis, right? That all of a sudden the clocks would turn to January 1st, 2000, and those 2 little numbers at the end would force like planes to fall from the sky and bombs to blow. We're all going to die, right? And so in 1999, I was a great salesperson selling stuff that was required to prevent that, or so I thought. It was like I was working at a drive-through window. So early 2000s come around, there's all these startups that are coming out of nowhere, and people are making millions everywhere. And I'm like, I want to be one of them. And like, I go run into that ship of millionaires, and I just ran right off. And I ran a couple of startups into the ground. And then I ended up starting my own sales training company, and didn't do that very well either. But those risks that I took, I know for sure have made me so much better and so much more aware. And the rest of my career is, I'm blessed to have had it take off the way it has. And I'm sure it was because of those failures in the early 2000s.
How do you bounce back from that, man? Most people, when they hit a failure, they think that's it. So how did you bounce back from that to create the business and life that you have today?
Well, I'll tell you, the sales training business that I had in 2003, I bought it as a franchise. And it turned out the guy I bought it from, not so up and up. But what I used it as an experience to do is, at the time I was thinking, do I go get my MBA, or do I go jump in feet first into something that I know I could be passionate about? And worst case scenario is that the business fails, but I'm smarter for having run my own business, and doing it from a sales training perspective allowed me the opportunity to get into 30, 40, 50 companies and see how they operate. And so I even knew going in that, listen, if this fails, probably going to, failure would be about the same investment as an MBA. But to me, I think on the back end, I'll be more valuable. And I rolled the dice. And so being able to go into a risky situation like that, knowing that worst case is still pretty darn good, it was actually pretty easy to bounce back from it.
Man, I love it. So let's talk about investments. What would you say is the most worthwhile investment you've ever made?
Well, going back to that, taking the risk. I literally at the time was a sales rep selling stuff that I hated. I was selling financial consolidation tools in 2002. And I remember waking up going, I can't believe I'm going to be talking to boring people about this boring crap again all day today. Like, that's literally the way I felt about it. And I remember going into work and I was commiserating with a coworker in his cube. And he was just like, Todd, you'd be really good at, sales training, sales enablement. Like, you're such a philosopher around all of that stuff. You should go do that. And I was like, all right. And so I started doing some research and literally took everything I owned and sold it so I could buy that franchise. And again, year one, I made $12,000 of revenue, like, a solid low 5 figures of revenue. And I still look back at that as not a failure, but like the greatest investment I ever made was buying that, failure of a franchise, because again, it set up the rest. And I always look back at that and go, I never regret a dollar of that spent.
I love it, man. So in the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, habit has most improved your life?
I developed a real passion around understanding the human brain. And I know that's really weird. In looking at what neuroscientists have been able to uncover over the last 12 years and how we engage, how we prioritize, how we decide, for me, it's just been so eye-opening because it impacts every level of business from a professional level. But I got young kids, and I'm actually like half of the decision and brain science stuff that I read, I think about how does it apply to the way that they're going through life right now and the pandemic and puberty and how they're going to grow up, and how do we get them into a place where instead of us focusing on the content of what they learn, how do we focus on developing a desire and a passion for learning, right? And so while I looked at decision and behavioral science as a path to really differentiate and help the sales profession, I found that it's actually had a real holistic impact on all of the things that I do and the way that I perceive the rest of the world. And hopefully I'm able to make an impact in a positive way as a result.
Yeah, man. So let's talk about bad recommendations you hear in your area of expertise.
Wow. Yeah. You just touched a nerve because I don't know if your listeners have been paying attention to Clubhouse.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Clubhouse?
How could I not hear about Clubhouse? Yes.
Exactly. And so I'll tell you, I got invited. And the first day that I got invited, I signed up, and then I saw there was a group, and it was like this sales leadership, sales management advice group. And so I was like, I want to see what this is. So I click on it and I listen, and there's this panel of sales leaders, and they're allowing like new sales leaders to ask questions. And somebody asked a question. This person gave some of the worst advice I had heard it basically beat the guy up and then gave him some horrible advice. And the guy was like, oh, thank you. That's really great. I'm going to use that. I'm like, no, what is this thing? Like, I'm watching I don't know if it's a trend, but there's essentially this desire, this passion around personal branding that's causing people to become, I don't know, it's like the blind leading the blind in some of these things, where I'm watching a bunch of cooks that haven't quite developed the chops to be a great cook, telling us all how to cook a gourmet meal. And I'm like, I don't know. It's, I'm seeing a lot of that, not only on like LinkedIn, but I'm seeing more and more of it, especially with this Clubhouse. I think there's got to be some vetting that happens because so much of the advice that I'm hearing that people are buying into is not well earned.
Dude, so I usually don't talk on my show, but I knew that you were going to do this. I don't know if you I know you study some of the olds and the greats. Earl Nightingale talks about it's not even a game of follow the leader, it's a game of follow the follower. And that's exactly what I hear you describing. And then that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed our first conversation and why you're on the show, because that's what this show was about, or is about, is thought leadership is easy, results leadership is hard. And I know that you live and die by this. All right, we're going to get into my favorite part of the show, and maybe your favorite too, where we talk about results. But first, are you getting results? Have you been listening a while? Have you learned something? Have you picked up a tip, a piece of information, something that's been helpful to you? Then guess what? You can be helpful to someone else by sharing this show. Use hashtag resultsleader.fm and share the show out there. Be a hero to somebody today. Thank you for that. And let's jump back in. So with that, let's talk about results. Why do results matter?
Well, yeah, I think, why do results matter? I mean, I always think about it from like an outcomes, like why do outcomes matter? What I do professionally now is, like we joked about, I wrote a book that I thought had a 50-50 chance that it would suck, but it's turned out to go really well. And as a result, I've been able to develop a business around it. And I had somebody call me this morning who is also trying to build their own kind of consulting business. And their question was, Todd, what do you do when a client wants to record the session for internal purposes? Like, are you cool with that? Do you allow that? And my answer was, of course. Like, the goal is the outcome. It's not the check. The goal is, when you're delivering a program or you're delivering anything, knowing that, there's all kinds of like nerdy stuff that I can get into around the serial position effect, which means if I'm going to lay out some things for you, you're going to remember the first and the last thing and forget the middle. If my goal is to deliver a program that I want to deliver an incredible outcome so that I'm the first person you call later, your business is doing so well that you're hiring more people that could be better opportunities, that you want to advocate, like that's the goal. The goal isn't the event. The goal is the outcome. The goal is the results, because results are what matter. And the answer is, yeah, like, of course, not only record it, but tell them how to leverage it internally so that they get those results. I'll tell you, if you don't mind me going on a kind of a side rant for a minute, let's think about what results are. I've recently been talking about this idea of like, where is the profession of sales going? And my belief is, for us to know where it's going, we have to know where it came from. And if you look back as little as 105 years ago, sales as a profession was not only trusted and respected, but it was admired. You know why it was admired? I mean, it was admired to the point that in the middle of World War I, 1916, President Woodrow Wilson, in the middle of a world war, where is he speaking? At the World Sales Congress, which was a sales conference in Detroit, 3,000 salespeople, and Woodrow Wilson, in the middle of a war, comes to address them. Do you know why? Because sales was seen as the key driver in our country's ability to, not only establish a lead, but extend it during the progressive era of the Industrial Revolution. Salespeople, when selling the right products to the right companies at the right time, made those companies strong. When those companies were strong, they grew. When they grew, the economy grew. When the economy grew, the country succeeded and grew. And as a result, salespeople were seen as the arbiters of making these companies successful. And when they were successful, everybody was. I think there was a period in between where salespeople kind of lost their way, and they started becoming about, I got to make me successful. And when I think about results, you become successful when the people that you're trying to influence become successful. And we need to get back to that. I think there's the rollouts of technologies like the telephone, like email, like LinkedIn, caused us as a profession to basically lose our face, lose our ability to look somebody in the eyes and really care about their outcomes. And as a result, we became selfish, and that's almost on a subconscious level. And we need to get back to that. That's what results are. Results are delivering outcomes for your clients so that they grow. And when they grow, you grow.
I just want to let that sit there.
Yeah, that was one that, just looking at history and knowing why was the profession so admired back then? And here we are in 2021, and Gallup comes out in December every year with their most to least trusted professions. And I'm not arguing that salespeople at some days should be the same as veterinarians and nurses. Of course not. But we shouldn't also be scraping the bottom like we have every year, along with members of Congress and senators. Like, that's depressing to me. And I just think there's such an opportunity for us to at least move up by getting focused on the right thing, the right results, the right outcome. Because again, when the people that we're trying to impact are successful, we're all successful. And we've just lost sight of that.
Man, that is poetic, brother. So in the last 5 years, what new realization has helped you get better results for your clients?
Well, there's certainly a self-serving one there. And it's this whole concept about transparency. And, to take a step back on that, there's a company that you may have heard of. They seem to be doing pretty well. They're called Amazon. I think it's Amazon. I don't know if you've heard of that.
The Amazon.
Yeah, it might be they may have removed the. But back in 1995, they started this thing where on products on their own website, right under them, they allowed customers who have tried that product to come back and rip on the product, like leave a review that shows up right under their own product on their own website. And guess what happened? They sold more of it. It was beginnings of this idea around transparency and this ability for a customer to truly predict what their experience is going to be like so that they can make better decisions for themselves. And the discovery, probably just about 5 years ago now, came through a research study that showed that when a customer is buying a product online, so the website's acting as the salesperson, what do? Well, we all look at reviews today. No surprise. Like when we're buying something we haven't bought before, of course we do. But the thing that literally changed my life, like I quit my job and wrote a book like an idiot, is that 82% of us go to the negative reviews first. So we skip the 5s, we go right to the 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s. And that when a product has got an average review score between a 4.2 and a 4.5, that's optimal for purchase conversion, meaning a 4.2 sells better than a 5. Product that's got nothing but perfect reviews on it. And I looked at that and thought, all right, that's when a website's acting as a salesperson. What happens in B2B, human to human, face-to-face type selling? And it turns out it's the way we're wired. That when we lead with our imperfections, again, if 82 to 85% of us go to the negative reviews first, it's actually what our brains desire. When we lead with, hey, listen, before we get too deep into this, here's what you might not like. Here's what a competitor does better. Here's something that doesn't always work right. If that's going to be important, let's address that now. And if you're cool with that, we give that up to be great at our core. That kind of transparency. And it's not, hey, we suck. It's, hey, we're not perfect. When you lead with that type of transparency, you build an entire relationship on a foundation of trust. You speed the buying brain's ability to predict what their experience is going to be like with your products or services, which means your sales cycle speeds up and your win rate goes up. But it also means that if you're going to lose a deal, if you're engaged in something that you shouldn't be, you're going to find that out a lot faster, which means the gift of time is given back to you to focus on the opportunities that you should win. That was by far the biggest discovery that I've made in the last 5 years is transparency sells better than perfection. And due to the proliferation of reviews and feedback on everything we do, buy, and experience, we got to do it anyway. So like now is the time to engage. That's why I wrote the book. And I think that's why it's resonating so much because it not only feels good, but it improves results and it creates great relationships and trust.
Love it, man. So let's talk about you for a second. What area of your business would you like better results?
Well, I'll tell you, 2020 was certainly a bull ride. For me, going into early 2020, like my business was on fire. I was booked out for 10 weeks. It was amazing. And then it was almost like one day I woke up and I looked at my calendar and I think I might have seen tumbleweed actually blow through it. It was like, what the heck? And then, go in the shower, in the cold shower for a couple of days, just crying myself to sleep. And then I woke up and I was like, wait a second. there's a couple of things that we can do here. When we reach levels of uncertainty, our survival brain kicks into gear. And if we know that's happening across everybody, across the people that we sell to, the people that we work with, we can actually read their minds and we can help them. And there's a reason why we all ran to Costco and bought up all the toilet paper, right? Like our brain, again, we're wired for certainty. We're wired to predict. Certainty is really important. And that's one thing you don't want to be living. Like there's a reason why we all went out to the mailbox and grabbed the mail out with salad tongs. And so I shifted my business around that, the whole virtual world, but also, how do we sell and maintain and actually grow and optimize in times of uncertainty? Well, that worked great for about 3 months. And then people are like, all right, Todd, got it. And then it went down into the toilet again. Looking right now, I mean, I look out over my next 6 months, I've got a lot booked. Like my business is back to where I needed it to be, but I've only got one face-to-face thing scheduled between now and forever. And I just wish in my business that I could predict. I wish there was a way to get more certainty because right now it continues to be this up and down bull ride and you can't predict what's 2 or 3 months is going to look like from now. And as a result, it's hard to create a solid strategy for what my 2 to 5 year plan is going to be when I can't even predict what June's going to look like.
Yeah, man. So let's go positive. What results are you most proud of?
Oh, man. This is going to sound so cheesy, but I'm going to lay it on you. The thing that I'm always just proud of is every single time I get a client that calls me like 2 days after I teach a workshop or give some kind of a talk, and they're just like, dude, the ROI was 2 days on that talk. Like I had one of those calls this morning and I like still got like the little wet cheek from a tear rolling down it around a client that I taught them this concept that it's called transparent negotiating, but it's founded on this idea that traditional negotiation classes taught by former FBI hostage negotiators. Like, doesn't anybody think that's a little weird? And that there's an opportunity to actually play your cards face up in negotiations, build trust, build value to the goal line, make your deals more predictable. And so I taught this class last week, and I already got a call saying, during a team meeting, there was a rep that was just like, I used it and there was no discounting and they signed right away. And it was like magic. And I'm like, that's awesome. So those are the kind of results I love, man, is when I'm making an impact, not only on a company, on the individuals, but there's always days where you wake up and you're like, is this nonsense that I'm sharing or not? And then you hear that sort of thing. And that's really all that matters.
Yes, sir. So speaking of making an impact, when our listeners want to get more of you, where should they go?
Well, the sad reality is that I'm very hard not to find. So, Todd Caponi, I think the best place is just toddcaponi.com or transparencysale.com. I share a lot of stuff there. One of my calls this morning, the guy who was asking me, he's just like, Todd, what is the line between you sharing all your goodness or holding back some of it so that people will actually pay you for it? And I kind of goes back to my whole point here was to get these ideas out there. So when you go there, there's a lot of articles where I just share my stuff. There's videos. There are classes, workshops, keynote talks. There's a blog that you can sign up for, but it's all there. And if you start there, that's the best place. But then, we didn't even get nerdy on the sales history, but just for fun, as a side hobby, I do share little quotes and ideas from sales histories past at Sales Historian on both Twitter and Instagram, if you're interested in following along.
By the way, one of my favorite IG accounts. I'm always looking for them. So that is awesome. We will share links in the show notes. Any parting thoughts?
No, I think this idea that transparency sells better than perfection. Like I said, the behavioral science says it. The data says it. All the research points to it. We've always known it. Back in 1919, Arthur Dunn is quoted as saying, if the truth won't sell it, don't sell it. Yet, here we are in 2021, and so many of us still hide our flaws and try to present our products and services as though they're perfect. But just know that because of this proliferation of feedback and reviews on everything, you got to do it anyway. So go embrace it. And it works, feels good, now is the time.
Love it, man. Ladies and gentlemen, Todd Caponi here on the mic, rocking it. Love this interview, and definitely going to have to talk to you some more on this. Thank you for being here, Todd, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in.
Thank you.
That is a wrap for another edition of ResultsLeader.fm. If you are out there getting results for your clients and you want to be featured on the show, go to ResultsLeader.fm now and apply to be on the show. And if you love what you're hearing, share the show, give us a rating and review, do anything to help us get the message out there. Thought leadership is easy, but results leadership is hard.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.